Alright, so normally we do videos on here that have a little bit more production value to it, but I just wanted to get right to it today. I'm not even getting out of the car. We're not even gonna put anything down and edit it like we normally do. We're just getting right to the subject at hand, which is the reaction to the video of watching Philando Castile being shot and killed. And there's a lot of reaction on both sides to this story, and the fact that there's multiple sides that are polar on this is really problematic, because I think this is a much more complicated scenario than what we've boiled it down to. You see some on some sides say, well, obviously the police officer thought that he was reaching for a gun, so he was doing, he was defending himself. I saw the word lynching used in the description of one of the videos that I saw, the lynching of, and so that kind of makes the accusation of something altogether different and very pointed, really. And I don't know that we're dealing with either one of those, to be honest with you. I think what we're dealing with here is something I talked about in a Facebook post once. So anybody who's friends with me on Facebook might remember my ROI versus ROE post. And so I feel that I have some level of perspective to speak to this statement on, for a couple of things, for a couple of reasons. One of which, I think back to a time when I was involved in being pulled over myself, and something with police officers. So it was a time when me and a couple of friends of mine, it was back when I was still in the Army, and we were just kind of doing a road trip weekend, and so we're heading up the road, and I was in the back seat. Just kind of looked over my shoulder, and we noticed that a cop kind of zoomed in behind us. So instantly, everybody goes into that kind of typical oh shit mode, like, oh, make sure you're buckled up right and everything. Well, I didn't have my seatbelt on, and I was kind of sitting on the seatbelt, so I just kind of adjusted myself to pull the seatbelt out. That way it was handy if we got pulled over, I could just buckle it up, and there we were, not doing anything wrong, from my perspective there. Sure enough, the lights go on the car, so we're like, what the fuck? We pull over. The officer hollers in on his public address unit for us to exit the vehicle, which is something that we all thought was kind of strange. So the two gentlemen in the front seat, they get out and kind of go around the car, following the officer's instructions. I get out from the back seat, and I'm walking around. So while this happens, the two officers get out of their cruiser. I'm walking around the back of the car, and just out of nowhere, one of the officers just puts his hands on me, grabs my ass. And my reaction was somewhat, I don't know, maybe visceral, I guess. I just was not expecting that. I was not being told I was being searched. Just all of a sudden, the hand's grabbing my ass. I'm like, so I reflex, just totally reflex movement. I slapped his hand away from me. Well, that was not met so pleasantly, but I tell you what, though, I wasn't shot. And I feel like I've been seeing over the last number of years a number of black men being shot for far less, actually. So why was I not shot? Was I not shot when I slapped the cop's hand? Which, let's be honest for a second, the cop was totally in the wrong, because he didn't tell me that I was being searched. He just all of a sudden took to grabbing me. And so we had a little bit of an altercation about that. He put his hand on his weapon and yelled at me. To which I said, well, dude, I literally scolded the guy. I just said, well, dude, you did not tell me I was being searched. Well, once he told me I was being searched, I said I was happy to comply, because I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. At the end of it all, the reason that they pulled us over was because that when he saw me, what I was doing was adjusting the seatbelt from underneath me. He thought I was hiding a weapon. They searched the vehicle, the whole 9 yards, and then they asked me what I was doing, what was I hiding. They were insisting there was something in there. And I just told him, look, I was just adjusting, dude. That's all it was. You want to search the vehicle again? But again, I didn't get shot that day, but I feel like there's been plenty of black men that have been getting shot for far less. So, was it because I'm white that I didn't get shot? That's one issue that I kind of notice about this whole thing. That's one level of perspective that I have. Another level of perspective that I have is on this whole thing is that I think that we in our country probably do not do a good enough job of training rules of engagement with our police officers and maybe having enough of a rehearsed and trained and maybe even consistent set of ROE, rules of engagement, for our police officers to follow. I'm sure that these things would vary from department to department, how leadership in each of those respective jurisdictions feels is necessary. But I do know that, for my part, my perspective on this is that things like a well-rehearsed and well-trained rules of engagement lead to less unnecessary shootings. My perspective on that comes from my deployment to Saudi Arabia, where we had an engagement that could have led to an unnecessary shooting. I was only 19 years old, my first job out of high school, and found myself in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia helping to secure a little plot of land that we affectionately called Camp Eagle Town. It was on the outskirts of an Air Force base, of a Saudi Air Force base. And so there we were. There we found ourselves, kind of, manning a checkpoint to make sure that there would be no terrorist attacks on Camp Eagle Town, as we called it. And sure enough, there was a time when there was some semblance of a, and forgive me for trying to measure my words, I want to be sure that I'm being appropriate in all aspects of my recollection of this. But at any rate, we had a moment where a MP bomb-sniffing, explosive-sniffing dog reacted on a vehicle. So my part in the battle plan, as it were, was to secure the traffic on a road. I did so. When I tell this story, I usually go into a bunch of wild detail, but I realize I've already been talking to you for 7.5 minutes, so I'm going to try to cut to the chase. I ended up face-to-face with a guy that was unable to communicate with me. I was unable to communicate with him because I only spoke English and had a card in Arabic of different catchphrases. He spoke neither one of those languages. So there was plenty of issue for there to be a lot of miscommunication, a lot of difficulty, and there was throughout that experience. However, the Army, in their wisdom, had us very, very well rehearsed on our rules of engagement. And that led to nobody being unnecessarily shot in that instance. Because that individual, as all of our evidence kind of pointed to, that individual was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There were definitely instances in there that one would probably think that I would have been justified to shoot him. The part where he almost ran me over with his truck. The part where he was just walking towards me blankly and not stopping when I asked him to stop. There was a bunch of instances where the layman would probably think, yeah, you should have just dropped that son of a bitch. But guess what? I would have been shooting an innocent man at that point. At least with all the evidence that we had before us at the end of once everything was done, once we were debriefed. So, again, what saved me from making a potential fatal error there? The rules of engagement that we were trained day in and day out, ad nauseum. And I just feel that the way that we, in our country, the way that our police forces are run, partly out of necessity and mostly out of a lack of budget, it seems like to me, is that we don't offer them enough repetitive training. We get them through their police academies, we get them out there onto the streets, and the training just kind of ends there, and it's just real world, and you just learn on the streets. I think we need to find a way to offer our police force more training, more repetitive training, and maybe a more consistent set of rules of engagement of the people that they're dealing with out there. And I honestly believe that that would lead to less unnecessary police shootings. I could go on, but again, the nature of this YouTube channel is to foster conversation and discussion, and I've already been going at this for 10 minutes and 15 seconds now, so I turn it over to you folks. Please offer some comments in the comments section. Let's have a real discussion about this. I'll be happy to clarify any points and questions that you folks may have. But let's just have a real conversation beyond it's all about racism or it's all about that black people don't know how to react to cops, because I don't think that that's either one of the things that we're dealing with here. I think it's something a lot more complicated, and complicated scenarios require complicated answers. So let's have a deep discussion about this, folks. All right, it's been almost 11 minutes now. I'm out. Tell me what you think, folks.